ambitious agents and investors from across the country. Today is Thursday, June 5th, 2025. And this is All the Leads Mastermind Podcast number 531. Tim, what have you got for us this week? It's all yours.
That's it. That's all. That's your whole contribution, huh?
For now, yes. I'm sure I'll add later.
Wow, you really brought your A game today, bud. Congratulations. Hey, guys, glad to have you here. Always glad to have you. Kind of got a small group today, which is great. Be greater if it was a great big group. We always love to have lots of people and all that sort of stuff. But everybody who's on here today pretty much are people that we work with and know well. So we'll enjoy ourselves today. Couple of things I'd just like to kind of start off with. We spend a lot of time here talking about probate, and that's kind of what we built the company around, and we're experts at that, and we think we're the best in the business, and till somebody comes along that's better, we're going to hold on to that. But I'm going to talk today a little bit about the late mortgage side of our business and kind of where we're going with that and how that's worked out and what people are finding in terms of best practices and how to get after it. We ran a bit of a end of the month special last month, and we've had a bunch of new people that are just starting their journey with late mortgage. So I think that's a very important thing to talk a little bit about, and particularly to talk about how to appropriately pursue that. So I'm going to start off by, I had a conversation with a customer who'd been with us 5 months or so, working with and working with late mortgage. That's what he started off buying. His results were horrible, just horrible. And he was discouraged and on the verge of walking out and saying, this is not for me. He said, I know the leads are great. I know that the information that you've given me is great. He said, I'm just not doing well connecting with anybody. And he said, I feel uncomfortable with that. I don't feel like I'm suited for this. I said, well, talk to me about what you're talking about. And so he did. And he said, I try to get them on the phone and, try to quickly find out if in fact, their late mortgage is causing them to be ready to sell their house. I said, well, that's a great place to start. I said, how are they responding to that? He said, well, a lot of them tell me to mind my own damn business. And I kind of laughed. And I said, how would you feel if you knew that you were late on your mortgage and you knew that none of your neighbors knew, none of your friends knew, none of your families knew, and here comes this guy from out of nowhere saying, hey, I hear you're late on your mortgage. You want to sell your house? He goes, well, I wouldn't feel very good about that. I said, well, stop doing that. He laughed. So we talked a little bit about that, and I gave him a couple of suggestions of some things he might try to do. Had a similar conversation later in that day with yet another person who was trying to, change their game plan a little bit. And in both cases, the thing that I suggested that they try was that instead of obviously opening up with, hey, you want to sell your house, I hear you're late on your mortgage. Basically, and I'll harken back to Bruce a little bit about this. He often talks about circle prospecting and all of that, and talking about having buyers in their local market. I said, have the conversation wrapped around needing to find available inventory in their marketplace. That you're looking for property in their area. You've got buyers that like that neighborhood, want to buy it. Prices seem good in that market. However you want to express yourself. I said that's basically being a realtor. I said that's important for you. I said if you can't do that, then you might want to consider applying at Walmart or finding something else to go do. Well, I don't want to do that. And I said, well, good. Let's figure out a way to do this better. What are you comfortable with? So we role played a little bit. And what turned out to be effective for him, and in both cases, was having just a simple conversation about that and leading into the services that he provides. And In both cases, these were guys, and they both provided a similar set of services. They'd recruited a few people to be on their team. They had clean out crews. They had, some of the other stuff that worked around probate because they'd been with us a little bit. And so they knew some of that. And I said, well, what are you offering as unique service to somebody who's in, having trouble paying their mortgage? You got money for them? Well, no. I said, you sure you don't have any money? What do you mean? I said, well, what do you know about any part of their property? He goes, well, I don't know anything about it. I said, well, maybe one of the things you ought to talk about are the services that you do provide to people that are experiencing divorce or experiencing probate or all that, and who are having trouble with their mortgage. You specialize in people that are, experiencing distress, and talk about the fact that, if there's a necessity for a short sale, you can help them with that, or you can possibly help them find a way to get some money out of their property to make it better or refinance or whatever, but don't make it what you lead with. And it's part of all the services that you offer. If they're interested and if they know they're in that circumstance and you make it appealing enough, they will engage you in the conversation. And so we went back and forth on that a little bit, hung up, got off the phone. Probably late afternoon, one of the guys called back and said, I got my first listing appointment. I said, well, how'd that work? He said, well, I tried it. He said, I called 5 people, and he said the 5th one that I talked to, I just started talking about all the cool stuff that I knew how to do that we talked about, and dropped it into the conversation that I also helped people that were, having payment problems with their mortgage. And he goes, well, I'm having that problem right now. And he said, off to the races we went. He said it worked out great. Now, I realize that this is, you guys know how to do this and it's part of your business, but the key message I want to offer here and get some feedback on is putting yourself in the position of the person on the other end of the phone. If you can identify with what they're feeling, you're going to be way down the road in terms of being able to talk to them, because you're going to talk to them the way you would like to be talked to. And I can talk for both Jim and myself. Back at the end of the, or not the end, it felt like the end, but back when the real estate crunch hit in 6, 7, 8, 9, we were on the other end of that phone. We were the people who couldn't pay our mortgages on properties that we owned. And, Jim had it much worse than I did. He had more property he had to deal with. And I had all my equity tied up in properties that were sinking literally like stones. And I had nowhere to go to get the money. So we were stuck. And people are finding themselves in that situation now and are going to be increasingly in that situation. Lots and lots of people are out of work now that weren't out of work a month ago. There's been a big set of upheaval in that. You've got to get good at this. So what I'd like to talk a little bit about, if anybody has any thoughts or things to share a little bit about that, is what have you found that's great in terms of not leading with it, but dropping it into the conversation as to how to engage someone who is in fact late on their mortgage, who is potentially going to lose their property if they don't do something. Knowing full well, and this is the last thing I'll add, knowing full well that a whole lot of people, when they get in that situation, do absolutely nothing. They do nothing. What they do is they sit and they wait until somebody comes and basically throws them out. And, the mortgage company will, foreclose, and eventually the house will get sold and they're stuck. Well, they can do something about it now. They have an opportunity to deal with it. Not if they wait 6 months. 6 months from now, they might be able to do something, and you still might be able to help them. But we get you in front of them much earlier than that. And that's the key element to remember. And it's what you can talk to them about. Well, I can help you before this gets out of control. So let's talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to kind of call on my friends here who help us out with this sort of stuff with, Jim and Aline and Bill. Jim, you held your finger up there, bud.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we agree that the worst approach, we even say with probate, it's not the best approach to say, hey, do you want to sell your house? But it's certainly a worse approach with divorce and late mortgage, because, they didn't get themselves in the probate situation, although they may be stressed about it. That's the worst approach. What you just mentioned is a good one. There's somebody on the call, Ed, who has shared a third approach with us that I thought was really interesting. I don't know if you want to share that again, Ed. Maybe 3-4 months ago, when he started getting the late mortgage and the divorce leads, he had kind of a third alternative. Ed, would you raise your hand? I'm kind of picking on you. Maybe now all of a sudden he disappeared. Oh, there he is. I think it was Ed Pesca that shared with us a different approach that he takes. But Ed, if you want to participate and volunteer, I'd be intrigued. But I'll wait a minute before I say something in case he volunteers. So I'll let the other coaches go first.
Arlene, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I guess so.
I knew you were.
Yes,
You
right.
had to look.
Yeah, I had to look. I was waiting to see if Ed was going to jump in. I guess my approach is typically, and what I promote is really to kind of address the elephant in the room in the most discreet and obviously non-confrontational and most. Oh, Ed, do you want to first?
I'm sorry, I ended up with a phone call. I didn't hear. I saw Jim was saying something.
Yeah, if you could jump in and then I can go after. Go ahead.
Jim, why don't you restate what you said, buddy?
Yeah, what I said, Ed, was we teach the worst thing you can do is confront them that they're going through a divorce or they're late on their mortgage. And I'm pretty sure it was you a few months ago when you first got started, had a really unique third approach that was working well for you. Do I have the right person?
I wish. No, I haven't. No, I don't remember.
I knew it. Pick another guy, Jim.
It's not Ed Pesca?
No.
Pick somebody.
All right.
Are you talking about the one your home has raised its hand?
Yes.
I'm telling you,
remember that
on
guy.
divorce, that has been the best by far.
Yeah, I thought it was you, Ed. It must have been a different Ed, but he volunteered to us that what worked real well for him was kind of like the Columbo approach. Like, this may sound kind of crazy. I'm sitting there with a list of properties that a friend of mine gave me, and for some reason, you're on a list where your house has kind of raised its hand and said it might want to be sold. Does that make any sense to you?
I remember hearing that.
Okay.
That wasn't me.
Wrong Ed. Sorry about that.
I think Bill's not just remembering it. I think it is Bill, wasn't it?
No,
Well, no. I shared it.
I got it from Tim, and I swear, whoever came up with that script, I need to send him some money.
Yeah, the guy's name was Ed, and I wrongly just
because they always ask, "What do you mean my house are raising?" I mean, that is 50% of the response I get when I use it, and I just simply say, "Well, I have this geeky guy. I kind of do it different than yours, but I say I have this geeky guy that has a computer, and he sends me a list of homes that have raised their hands, and it might have been the age of the home, how long you've owned the home, something got filed, maybe there's a death. There's a lot of variables. I'm not a computer guy, so, and then they always, oh, hey, I'm getting divorced. So that's probably what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I love that approach because it's a little, to me, it's slightly more honest than sounding like you accidentally called them. You're saying, hey, there's a reason I called you, but it's also kind of acting dumb like Columbo that you don't know exactly why.
Well, I don't look at the other version of dishonest because I am looking for property all the time. So I mean, that's the truth. I am always looking for property.
That's true. No, I'm saying to me, it's a little bit deceitful to make it seem random, but that's okay. I mean, as long as you can pull it off, it certainly isn't unethical or anything. But I love that third approach myself. I think that's a great thing.
I love it for divorce, probate. Haven't released it there too much. But the thing I always do is when I say I'm looking for property in the area, I'm specific. Santa Rosa, Marin County, St. Francis Woods, wherever it's at. So, but the one thing I just want to emphasize, because I do a lot of foreclosures. I lost 7 homes. I've done the whole thing. Is empathy and understanding is what they need. And then on the flip side, I think we've all said that once they get that third month down, they don't realize they're really not in control. And they don't want to realize that. They don't want to understand it. So,
Yeah, and Bill, I think it's critical to point out or to find a way to point out that it's easy to talk about other people rather than them. In other words, I find people who, get stuck with, they're a little bit behind on their mortgage or whatever, and they wait too long to do anything. Well, you may be describing them, but you're not telling them that. You're talking about other people, and they go, oh, yeah, that's kind of
absolutely, absolutely. Because, I think it's Eileen that says that, the sooner you sell it, the sooner that you're going to walk away with money, and you need to bring that to their attention because it's better to walk away with money than walk away with your credit ruined, foreclosure, no money, even cash for keys, depending on where you're at, money. So,
Yeah, and
Mhm.
I think the real message that I'm trying to bring here is that we focus a lot on probate and with late mortgage, we know it's a gold mine and it's getting to be more and more of a gold mine as time goes on. We I don't like to predict doom and gloom and don't believe in doing that. However, having said that, we all know that people have gotten financed in the last 5 or 6 years that probably right now are living paycheck to paycheck. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck, the big nut every month is that mortgage. And the first month you can't make it, you're not going to make it the next month either. And that's a hole that you fall off one time, and the chances are pretty good you're not going to get anywhere with that. And there are a lot of options that are available out there. I mean, you can even, yes, you want to buy and maybe want to sell that house, but you might sell it to an investor who wants to lease it back to them. They don't want to stay. I mean, they want to stay in the house. Find a way to help them stay there. There are investors who would like to find properties with built-in tenants that they can, make money on, and there are lots of ways to get things done. You need those things in your arsenal before you talk to them. So you've got some concept of what you can speak with them about. The other thing that we're also looking at is that you may find in late mortgage that people own those properties and there's equity in them. They've been making their payments, they just stopped, but they might have made their payments for 10 years. All of a sudden they can't make their payment anymore, but there's equity sitting there. Well, there are certainly ways to get that taken care of on a shorter term basis, as long as the equity's there and they don't wait too long, because their credit is probably sort of okay at that point. If the only thing they're late on is that mortgage 1 month, well, maybe go get a HELOC, maybe go do some stuff before their credit gets to the point they can't get the equity out of the house. So if time is of the essence, but you've got to be very deft in the way that you handle that.
so
Bill,
the,
anything else, though?
yeah. So the other thing is if you have an investor that's going to do a sale leaseback for a few months so their kids can stay in the school until they're out, or if you can find them an apartment or a rental that keeps them in the same school district, I find that to be very persuasive and like motivating them along.
Yeah, you've mentioned that 2 or 3 times about the school issue, and I think that's important to know is that, they're like, well, I'll just keep my head down until the school year's out. That way my kids aren't embarrassed at school and all that sort of stuff. So they wait, and school's out and they're out.
Yeah.
And that's the way it ends up. And, you can work with them and help, talk about dignity and all that. Once you identify that they're willing to tell you they're having a problem, you're home free. You get to that part of the conversation and they admit that they're having a problem, you're their lifeline. At that point, anything that you can do to help them, you're a winner. And it's how you would want to be treated. That's what's important. Well, that's just one part of the late mortgage side of the business. And I think, we haven't spent enough time ourselves on talking about the people that you need in your arsenal when you talk to them. As Bill mentioned, finding a lender who will do some of those things. Bill, what would you say a good characteristic for that kind of a lender would be? Somebody who might do a lease back.
Oh, you mean an investor?
Yeah, an investor.
Yeah. normally somebody that's looking for equity right away, right? So he gets a little bit better of a deal. The house is in good condition, and he's going to rent it long term. I would say that's good. So if you walk into the house and it's 1950 bungalow, it's a 3 bedroom, 1 bath with those, small closets, and it's got knob and tube and galvanized plumbing, then you would go with an investor, and there's got to be enough there. But most investors will recognize that 3-1, he puts a second bedroom in there, I mean a second bathroom in there. That's 75 to 100 grand worth of equity right away for 30 grand. So that's the kind of equity that you want to find as investors that are creative. I'm really impressed. I have this one guy, his name's Wilbur. I did other flips, not with him, but with clients, and he did the work, and we've got to be pretty good friends. And then he's on his 5th flip, man. This guy is happy making 100 grand on a flip. Most of my normal flippers want 200 to 300 grand, right? But he looks at it like, okay, my guys are slow. I'm gonna have this house in my back pocket. We're gonna fix it up, sell it, make some money. So that's the kind of what I'm looking for. Contractors to me in California are the obvious flippers because they have control of the cost.
Bill, go back to the first thing that you said there. You went right through it because it's falling off a log, smart for you, but you looked at that house and talked about adding another bedroom or adding whatever. Can you
Bathroom?
Yeah, walk through that, or bathroom, walk through that a little more slowly.
So when I look at a house that is in foreclosure or they're behind on the mortgage, I look at trying to get them the max amount of money, but then I got to sell it to an investor, right? So by adding that second bathroom is a really great way to sell it to the investor because they're going to see a higher number and they're going to be willing to pay more, right? So, and then also, if it's a bungalow in San Rafael, it's worth a lot of money. So they're going to be eager to make that deal because that style, that 1950 bungalow style with like the galley kitchen that they could probably open up a wall and make it bigger, add a 3rd bedroom, fix up the backyard. I mean, they're creating, actually more like 300,000 of equity if they got it for 800 or 900.
Just like everybody else's market, 800-900 is a normal house, right?
It is. It
Yeah.
is. Well, I mean, my average sales price is 1-1.
Right. It's all about where you are, right?
Yeah, I mean, the politics at times are worth putting up with when you look at our sales price. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
True to that.
Tim, I'll add something. In addition to what you lead with when you call these people, Aline said something that's so important. In my previous career as a real estate coach, it was stressed on us: don't make statements, ask questions. Have a series of questions to ask the people. Aline and us, before the call, we were talking about a client that she was really able to help by just asking a few good questions. So come to the call asking questions, find out what's important to you about saving your house, or what's important to you about not getting foreclosed. Is it important to stay? Is it important to stay in the school district? Is it important to, preserve your credit? Because we all, as salespeople, tend to come in and just give them fire hose them with all the ways we can help them. And 9 out of the 10 ways they don't want help. But just asking them, they'll identify right away. They'll kind of tell you how to sell them by asking good questions. They'll tell you what's important to them, and then you tell them how you can answer it. And it's kind of interesting too. People love to buy, but they hate to be sold. That's a very true axiom. And they will believe what they say way quicker than they'll believe what you say. So when they tell you what they need to do, and then you find a way for them to do it, the sale's done. I mean, it just makes the whole process so much more efficient.
Yeah, and I think, go ahead, Aileen, what were you gonna say?
I was going to say, I agree with that 100%. When anybody has said to me in the past, "Oh, you're right," I'm like, "Oh, that's like the worst." I don't want to be the one that's right. I want you to say, "Oh, I see it," like that they get it, and then it's in their words, and they say, this is what I'm going to do. And it's aligned with what, kind of what I think, but not doing it because they think I'm right. So, what I just wanted to also touch upon the initial conversation, which we're all here with like the most difficult approaches in real estate: probate, divorce, and late mortgage. I mean, that's like they say the three hardest things in life, right? Losing a loved one, going through a divorce, and then having to move out of your home, especially in the distress situation. So the approach and being first and foremost empathetic, like Tim said, and really making sure that we put ourselves in their shoes. Like, how would I want to be spoken to? I don't want to be played games with. So I know in some states, by the way, the play like lost salesman kind of works. I guess I've been selling in New Jersey, New York area for so long that I would get blasted for that. If I said to somebody, oh, your hand got raised, I actually think it sounds pretty brilliant, but I think like you have to know your audience. You have to know who you're speaking to. And if that's going to be somebody who's going to say to you, like, what the hell are you talking about? What hand are you like, they may blast you for that. So really know who your audience is. And in some places, of course, it works. In some places. So I know I've said this probably a million times. I always like to just get them off their guard and do something like, a pattern interrupt. Like, I don't even know if what I'm calling about is relevant at all to you. It may not be, but this is why I'm calling, or this is kind of what I've noticed, and this is what I specialize in. And another thing that I've learned this from Bruce is try different scripts. Don't just find one and go with it all the time. If you're calling probate or you're calling late mortgage, whichever one, or you're calling all of them, even just within one source, try different approaches, because it's good. You can mix it up, and sometimes one approach is better with one set of people, somebody on the other line, and a different time it could be better with another person. It's also really connecting to who's on the other line with you, and your tempo, your pace, all of that.
Aline, it's not only regional, but if anybody read that book, Outliers, people used to say to me, like, how do you get so good at selling? I said, do something 10,000 times and you get good at it. Well, it's not only a regional issue with the way people react, but if you get good at asking questions and listening, you can tell the personality of the type of the person you're talking to. And, if they're flippant and they're relaxed, you can go more with a
fun approach.
With a fun approach. If they're very serious or they're very stressed, you want to go with a different approach. But it's nothing that you can go in and plan. It's just being open-minded. Well, I won't say you can't plan to a certain extent, but the better you get at asking questions and getting them to talk more in the beginning, the better, more information you're going to get, and you're going to know with trial and error what approach is going to work the best with them. But you got to get up to you don't have to get 10,000 hours, but if you get to 100 hours, you'll start to get pretty good at it. And eventually you get to that 10,000 hours, you'll become an expert, and everybody will get there. And remember, it's not brain surgery. Nobody dies if you screw one up. You can always call the guy back next week and use a different approach.
So interesting. And, one of the things we talk about as well, how do you have 10,000 conversations? Well, you may have them from trying to call leads and all that sort of stuff and use the phone to get that done. But the other side of it is, today, I remember I grew up in a small town. It was small when I was growing up there. It's not a small town anymore. But I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, and everybody talked to everybody. When you'd go out, people would say hi. And, they'd wonder how you're doing and, how's things going at your school. And everybody kind of had something in common that they spoke with. And that art of human conversation and somewhat engaging strangers in conversation, that's a lost art these days. Well, it isn't a lost art with me. My kids and my wife will tell you that, we go places and all of a sudden I'm off talking to somebody that they know I don't know. And I just like talking to people. So I'll engage people in conversation that would not normally, have a conversation with anybody. And you get good at talking to people by talking to people. So when I'm on the telephone and I'm talking, for example, to our one of our subscribers, I try to get a mental picture of what that person looks like, what they're doing. I just sort of I get this vision in my mind of what their life looks like, and then I try to fill in the blanks with it. And it's fun. I enjoy talking to people. And if you don't enjoy talking to people and you're not comfortable with it, you got to get there, because everybody's got a story to tell. Everybody's got something they would like to tell you about. If you ever get to the point of getting someone to tell you a story that they enjoy telling, man, you're a winner. You got it made at that point, because you've always got that point of reference to come back to. Oh, I remember you told me about the fact that, when you were younger, you did this and you rode horses and, all that. Every time you talk to them, talk about that. Bring it up. Not you're not being manipulative. It's what people want to talk about. They love to talk about things that matter to them. But this practice that we're talking about, it applies to every part of your business. Today, when you're out after you're off this call, the next time you find yourself out with a bunch of people, find somebody to talk to. Just, hey, how you doing? Or, you're walking down the store in an aisle or something. Talk about something. People will answer you back. You don't have to have a long conversation, but engage them in that conversation.
You're reminding me of the Progressive commercial with you got to fill the silence.
Got a what?
The guy at the gas station talking to the other guy pumping the gas, and he's got to give him the bathroom code, and they're kind of making. He teaches the next generation not to do that, but there's an advantage to doing that. And
how to not end up like your parents. Yeah, that's
exactly.
true.
Oh, yeah.
And you were talking about horses. I'm looking at Patty here. He's in a field with him and his partner there in a field with horses down there. So, Bill, you had something you wanted to add.
I'm sorry.
I just want to say, as we're talking about technique, all this stuff. So the number one thing I find with all the people that I have the honor of helping in this business, all the students, everybody, you got to pick up the phone and make the calls. So if you keep worrying about technique and then let me practice this script, well, what I find is they're not making the calls, right? And there is no wrong or right way to do this. It's just make the calls. And then as you go through, it will refine for you. But it's like, it's like exercising. You got to do it continually. I'm positive my techniques would not work in New Jersey or New York, nor do I ever want to be there. But my point being is you got to pick up the phone, be genuine, be caring, and the conversation will happen eventually for you, right? It's muscle memory. If you have an opening comment or an attention getter or a way to shift the paradigm, that's all the best. But when I started, I found just being genuine and asking if they needed any help seemed to work the best in the beginning for me.
I agree with you, Bill. And by the way, I don't want to be New Jersey and New York either. That's why I'm moving to Florida. But 100%. And I agree with you in terms of picking up the phone. And I want to just add to that and say that it gets boring. It gets boring to pick up the phone and just hear a dial and no answer. And then the next one, and maybe almost a whole day of that and not really getting many pickups. It can get very boring and tedious. So it's easy for us to make excuses of why not and why it's not working, because the boredom could take you there. But it's just, right, Bill, it's the grind, it's the work every day, and then the results happen, the magic happens from that.
Well, and I agree, and I just want to say what Bruce says. I'm always impressed because I call it in the queue. I never have 150 like Bruce talks about in the queue. I'm always 20 or 30. But the thing that I have really learned is out of 140 probate leads, I'm going to get 3 really good conversations. Out of those 3 conversations in the next 90 days, I'm going to get one of those. Right. And it's about having enough of those 3 to add into the queue and keep following up. Right. I have a probate I didn't get, and I could not figure out because I had worked with them for 9 months, tons of effort. And I realized at the end of the day, the wife just didn't like me. And that's what the husband told me when I called him back. And, so you're not going to get them all. We can do everything perfect and you're just not going to get them all. And that's great because there's a lot out there.
So Bill, if I follow that math, so you're going to do 10 to 12 deals a year? Is that about right? Just from probate? Is that about right?
Oh, yeah, I've done that. I've done that for a long time.
Okay. And again, we've talked about
last year I did almost 21 deals, which was a great year. There was 18 of them, all from some form of probate.
And all 21 of those, how many people on each deal go into your sphere of influence, and how many referrals are going to come in the future years? And the multiplier effect is what a lot of people don't factor in also.
Well, so of my 21 deals last year, keep in mind I'm doing way better this year, but is all of them were at some point came through all the leads and they were in my pond, which is my marketing, right? So I spent almost 12 grand, 14 grand a year just on the postcards for people that I've had conversation with from all the leads. And I send them out everyone should write this down. I send out Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year is the most important. Christmas and New Year, because a lot of people make a decision to sell, especially if they have rentals in November and December. And then New Year's, then I send Valentine's Day, which is my favorite day. And then I send out 4th of July. I usually do a memorial or one of the other ones, and then Halloween, and then I just pick it up all over again, right? And I send nice postcards in an envelope. I pay the money to Biden sign and everything, and with the auto pen, and it has paid off. It just pays off. Just does.
I get those from my insurance agent, who's also my brother, and I always recognize it's not his signature.
Yeah, well,
but that's okay.
At this point, they've seen my signature so many times; it is my signature.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I was thinking, Tim, what's that?
Probably writes better than we do.
Yeah,
by far. Does.
Yeah, it's something we've never really talked about, Tim. We probably could do that, a holiday card service for a sphere of influence.
But we sell those.
Oh, you do? Okay, there you
go. Good idea, though. I think we'll do that.
Do the holiday package.
Yeah, we do every year. We do lots of Christmas cards for our folks.
Hey, Tim, I don't know if you saw David Bell has a win that he wanted to share. If David, if you want to, got a $30,000 assignment fee he just mentioned. If you want to raise your hand and share that, David, that'd be great.
Hey, Winston, I will wait while we're waiting on David. I asked you to unmute earlier. I was going to ask you a quick question. I'll ask you again. There you go. So, we've talked about Eileen moving from New Jersey down here to Florida, and you're relocated as well. And what are you finding? This is off the topic a little bit, but what are you finding the biggest difference in the market to be where you were to where you're going?
Guys, I just lost the screen, so I'm just looking at a white screen right now, but I'll try and answer the question. But I really can't because I did not get my license here. I was going to test, and I got sick and ended up spending 42 days in a hospital. So what we're doing now is selling and moving back to Southern California. Out here, though, it's an interesting market. Huntsville is one of the top areas in the country to live in and invest because it makes sense here. The growth has been very strong. The agents just don't do things as well as what I think they should. There are a lot of differences between how they do it in Southern California and how they do it here. But that's probably about the best thing I can say for right now, guys, since I didn't get my license here. I've just been watching and observing this kind of a thing. But it takes a little while. These people have been around for a long time. They like to make sure they get to know you, get to trust you. What I used to do back in Southern California, I would just wear a name badge, had my name and Coldwell Banker on it. And whenever I helped somebody in the community, I always wore that. And that generated a ton of referrals for me. So that would work here as well.
are you going to go ahead and get rolling in the new market, or are you going to wait a while?
Now we're gonna move back to Southern California and pick up where we left off and really jump into it now with stronger commitment. I just played with it last time and I made money just playing with it. Now I want to get serious with probate.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we'll look forward to hearing great stuff from you because I know you're good at it. And one of the things I think that, I've always been impressed with you is that you're very sincere and, it sounds that way. It comes through in what you say. You're genuinely, you're empathetic with people, and you're one of the people I kind of always point to that it's comfortable to talk to you. And that means a lot. It's the same thing I feel when I listen to Bill or Aline or any of our coaches, Steve as well, that, I always feel comfortable talking to them because I know they're not out to, they're not out trying to rip me off. They're good people. That's got to come through on the other end.
It's easy to do
Sorry?
once you find something in common. And once you've got that conversation going, a lot of the fear or a lot of the potential rejection seems to relax. So, getting to know them, I think, is probably one of the smartest things anybody could do with a new client or a new phone call or a new referral. Get to know them, get to understand them. If they've got a problem, show them how you can help, and the rest will take care of itself.
Absolutely. Hey guys, we're 3/4 of the way through our hour here, and we haven't heard from anybody other than we're talking to ourselves and people that we talk to pretty frequently. Sure would like to hear from you. Click on the bottom on the react button and raise your hand. Talk to us about something you've run into that's a challenge. Talk to us about a question you found, something that you did that worked out well for you. Melissa, I see your hand up there. Unmute yourself and what's happening?
Hey, before we start with Melissa, I just wanted to tell David's having trouble unmuting. David, look and see if there's a little screen that says you're being recorded. You got to click that first, and that may allow you to unmute.
Well, he didn't raise his hand, so I didn't ask him to unmute. That would be probably why too, Jim.
Okay.
Hang on a second. Find him and we'll ask him to unmute. Anyway, there we go. Okay. You got your hand up there. We'll get to you there next. Where did Melissa go?
I'm right here.
There you go. Go ahead,
Hello.
Melissa.
I just wanted to say thanks again to everybody for a couple weeks ago because it really did help, and I actually did get a compensation. I don't know if you guys remember the thing about me helping my broker and all of that. It's been a little while, but I just want to say thank you, and it turned out good. So that's all. I always learn a lot from you guys, and I appreciate it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for coming back and, closing the loop with us. We asked you to do that. I appreciate it. That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
I don't know if you asked me to or not. I'm just very thankful. So I just wanted to say thanks again. Thank you.
That's great. Hey, David, what's up?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, let me try to turn my camera on. Yeah, I was trying to unmute, but it was saying you guys weren't allowing me to do it. I'm sorry. What you wanted me to speak about my assignment?
Yeah, you said you just got a big assignment fee, and I wanted you to, if you would, share the details, please.
Yeah, so no, because I had heard people. So I hear a lot in this industry that New Jersey and New York, like I think her name was Aileen said it, and someone else mentioned it, but I hear that all the time, like New Jersey and New York. I guess like the little East Coast area we're in, most investors don't like investing here because they say the same thing like Aline was saying. Like that is true. Like most sellers are very like standoffish, and it takes, I think, more time than it usually would in most other markets to really get them to be comfortable and put their walls down. It really is a thing here. I don't know why. But if you stay like consistent with it and build a relationship with them, you really can make like huge assignment fees or huge profits, depending on the situation. So the deal that I put in the chat, I created a driving for dollars list last year, and I closed one last year. I think I was in March for $40,000, and then I just got another one off of the same list. I'll be making $30,000, and I believe it's like in a few weeks is the closing. And I found it driving for dollars, but it took me like a year and a half to get the person to sign the contract. the story was he owned a property with his sister, and his sister had passed away. So he had to become the executor, but he did everything on his own. He didn't use like an attorney or anything like that. So that was the main reason why I had to wait so long, because he admitted that he kind of took a while just to take care of everything. But he was showing me like other postcards from other investors. So I'm not sure. I wanted to ask a quick question. When someone goes to the who would that be? The surrogate's office, I think, to become the executor, is there something that goes on record to show that transaction or anything like that? Because he was showing me all of the postcards he was getting, and there were people offering him, I mean, way more money than what I have it under contract for. But he chose to stay with me because I've been talking to him for over a year and a half. So he gave me like the first up the bat to help him out and get the property sold.
So what's your question, David? I'm not sure I understood your question, but
I'm sorry, I did kind of tie it in there a little bit too much. When someone goes to the surrogate's office on their own to become the executor of an estate of the estate, is there like a flag that goes up that shows that being done? Because that's when he started getting all of the other investors giving him postcards and reaching out to him.
so are you a subscriber for Leads right now?
Not yet. No, after I close this deal, I am.
So the whole premise and the whole point of, sort of why we're in business, actually. I mean, we're a lead gen company, and they get on, there's a filing that gets done that names them as the personal representative. It's a legal filing, and that legal filing is a public document. And so that's where those leads come from. They come from that docket that gets filed in that court, and that is a public document. Depending on where you are, you can go to the courthouse and research that info if you choose to do it and see who's done it. That's what we do to save you the time of doing that. We do the skip tracing and all the other pieces of that, so you know who you need to talk to. But that's where that comes from, is that legal transaction in court that, a judge says, yes, Mr. Smith, you're now the executor for Sally Jones's estate. And at that point, he's the personal representative, and he has the ability to stand for her in the public world, settling her debts, settling any estate, if there is real estate, ultimately being able to transact that real estate and sell it if in fact it's part of the estate.
Okay,
Does
so
that answer your
no, it does. I'm just trying to figure out like what would that be called technically? Like, is that technically, because he didn't file for probate, I don't think. Because probate is when there's not a will and everything
You'd
like
have to
that.
file for probate. You'd
It
have
is
to file for
okay.
probate.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called probate. He'd have to be filed for probate to become the personal representative.
Okay, I got you.
David, he may have done it on his own without an attorney. If he physically went to the courthouse and filed it, then that tells me that he probably didn't have an attorney. He went and did it on his own. And I don't know, maybe that would be considered a better lead for some investors that, they don't have to get past an attorney.
But it still gets published. We don't differentiate. There's no necessarily a way to differentiate that. The difference is with our leads, if you're a subscriber, in fact, if there's an attorney part of the deal, because if an attorney is listed on the docket, we add it to the content of the lead information that we give you. You ought to talk to our team and think about, taking a look at getting the leads, and that'll simplify your process a little bit.
Yeah, no, I definitely am, Tim, to be honest. I just wanted to wait until I got this check because I haven't closed the deal in a while. I had some personal things that happened to me, so I stepped out the business for like pretty much all of last year. I just got back into it January of this year, but I do want to buy leads from you guys. I agree.
I
appreciate the advice.
All right, man. Well, no time like the present. We'd love to help you, and we'll work with you. If you got a budget you need to work in, be happy to work with you there too. We'll have somebody reach out and talk to you.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I appreciate that. If anything, they can reach out to me like next month. I don't want to waste anybody's time because I won't be ready till next month.
All right, sounds like a plan.
Thank
Steve,
you. I appreciate it.
No problem. I appreciate it. Steve, I'll get to you in a second. I'm going to ask Patty to unmute.
Patty, I got to start with a really bad joke. You remind me of an old ad my wife and I ran that said we were outstanding in our field. That that looks like what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I thought we'd bring the cows today just to shake it up a little bit.
Yep.
We've been waiting till the cows come home. What's happening?
So we just got our first list from Jordan this week for the probate. So I guess my question is, we're working with a VA firm, and they've been doing a lot of these other leads we had before that were, I'll call it more cold calling. But it seemed like the probate is a little bit more sensitive and scripted. Is that something you recommend? Maybe initially Patty and I do the calling, just because of the approach is a little different than just a cold calling, kind of what we've been doing on some of these other ones.
I see Steve shaking and nodding his head. Steve, please.
So you're right. I think it will take a little bit more of an emphasis and empathy, which has been discussed when you're talking about probate. Yeah. You can go with a VA or an ISA, whatever you want to call it. But remember, the best analogy I give to folks I talk about, if you're going to do that based on your time and what you have available and the resource you have available, understand it's going to be volume over quality. You're going to lose a little bit of quality. Okay, and Matt Milia, who runs appointments today, he'll tell you the same thing. Okay, I've heard people tell me, hey, it's not the same. I hear the recordings are not it. Okay, well, you can go back to whomever and make that point. But I also spoke with a woman who's very busy, and she's like, look, my most valuable priority is picking up the phone and talking to people. Okay, there's no greater value that's going to come from that. So there are those.
How many leads did you get?
A little over 100.
Okay, so I mean, it's a function, and camp on what Steve said. It's a function of your time and how much time you have available and how you want to spend it. And if you've got a lot of leads, and you got 100 leads, that's a pretty solid amount of leads to work with. But there are two of you to do it, and certainly in the beginning, you need to do it because you need to hear what people in your market are saying. You need to have the conversations. You need to hear all of it. You need to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly, so that you're prepared for it. When you talk to that diamond that you need to talk to, you need to have heard all the other stuff. Now you're armed, and it's the same thing we talked about before. It's practice. So, it'd be great to have a VA do it, but in the beginning, I certainly urge you to pick up the phone, make phone calls. Certainly, I would also urge you to potentially do mail so that you're following up on that. You've got a reason to call them. I sent you a letter last week, wanted to make sure you got it, wanted to talk to you. I've got a practice where I help people that are, experiencing probate and working with it. And I work with personal representatives. What are you having trouble with? Something that simple. It's not a big, there's no big mountain to climb here. It's a simple, easy conversation, but you need to make it. You need to have it.
And I think that's one of the beauties of all the leads. It's always been about having a conversation, a meaningful conversation with the other person on the phone, provided you can get them on the phone. And we talked about, you're going to dial a bunch and you're just going to get a number, or it may go to voicemail, or nobody picks up, or sometimes a number that's associated could be a landline in a house that's been disconnected since it was filed. That'll happen. Okay, and there's no getting around that. However, even though all the leads has 6 pages of suggested scripts, and I've sent that to a lot of folks when I've had a coaching call saying, look, here's something for you to review. Please rehearse it, but put it in your own voice. What do you feel comfortable with? Because the last thing you want to do is come across as if you're reading off a script. I'm not saying anybody's ever done that, but it's going to be clunky when you start. Kind of Jim talked about, outliers, Malcolm Gladwell. Until you get into a rhythm of things, it's going to be a little bit uneasy. Okay, but the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. You knock off the edges and you smooth it out. But it's about consistency. And Bill Bird, I was 100%. I tell folks when they tell me, well, I'm not seeing results, I'm not seeing that. Okay, well, how often are you dialing? Are you making the dials? Have you been consistent doing it? If you think that this is going to happen right away, it's going to take anywhere between 3 to 6 months to build a pipeline. And I think for some, particularly when they come in, and sometimes we have investors who come in or wholesalers and understand they're more transactional. This is relational. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to have a conversation so you can build a relation and trust. And hopefully they'll like you. Like Bill said, hey, he lost a deal because somebody didn't like him for whatever reason. Bill's a likable guy, but you know what? We're not going to win them all, like you said. So It's about doing the effort. And if you are going to use a VA, respectfully, I always say, hey, make sure you know the KPIs. What are the metrics? What are you expecting in terms of leads? Because at the end of the week, if you're not getting anything, guess what? You're still cutting a check. That person's still being paid. All right. So it's a two-way street.
And
And if,
and I just want to add, Bruce's classes are good to get you going. He definitely knows his stuff. It's going to help you round those edges. And the thing I tell everybody, especially with the letters, you got to build your own letters that work for you. They're great examples at ATL, but you got to make them yours, and you got to put the local words in and come from yourself. You can't just take their stuff and go, hey, it's not working. You've got to cook it. You got to stir it. You got to make it work for you.
and we're going to get to you, Julian, for sure. I just want to say one other thing about the dialing side of this. First off, have you had your welcome call yet with your MIS guys?
No, we haven't.
Is that scheduled?
Yeah, that's
Did that get scheduled for you?
No, it's not.
Okay, make sure you do that, and during that, they'll get you scheduled to take the foundations class with Bruce. It's free. It's part of your membership. Definitely need to do that. That'll help you a lot. You started on that track with him. The other thing I was going to say about dialing is that if you're going to do it, don't do it when you get around to it. If you're going to do it when you get around to it, you won't get around to it. You've got to establish a time of the day that you're going to do it. Don't do it the same time every day. A lot of people say, I call from this to this Tuesdays and Thursdays. Well, that's good. What about the people who are hard at work that are the personal representatives on those times? You're never going to talk to them. So you got to vary your calling time. Set up intervals of time that are spaced out. Sometimes you're calling in the morning early. Sometimes you're calling after 5 o'clock. Sometimes you're calling right near the end of their day, right around 7:30, 8 o'clock. Vary your calling times, but do it on a schedule. Don't just do it when you get around to it. Make sure that you know that it's there and that you exhaustively call that list. Call until they tell you not to talk to them. What's the worst that can happen? Don't call me anymore. Okay, I won't. But up until then, get them on the phone. Make it happen. Hey, Julia, I'm sorry we've made you wait a good bit there, and we do want to get to you. What's up? Unmute. There you go.
Hi, how are you guys?
Great.
I'm new in this ATL space. I purchased the late mortgage leads.
Great.
I'd like to hear how to go at it.
Okay, well, we're kind of late in the hour to do that, but here's what I'd like to ask you to do. Have you had a conversation with our marketing implementation specialist yet?
I think I'm scheduled next week.
Okay, certainly go to that. They'll get you scheduled for some training that's involved in that. And if you don't mind, if you'll join us next week, same time, come on early, raise your hand early, ask the same question early, and let's get after it.
Okay.
Okay, because I don't want to give you a short answer. There's a lot more to talk to than just that. But some of the things that you heard here are, I don't know how long you were on the call, but we talked a good bit about that in the beginning, about what the approach needs to be and kind of how to go after that.
I missed the beginning.
Well, and that's what I'm going to say. This call will be available online in our Facebook group within probably half hour, an hour of the end of the call. So you'll be at the beginning of it, and that'll help you a lot there. And then come back next week.
Okay, cool. And another question, what dialers are you guys using?
We don't use a dialer. That's not what we do. You can use whatever you choose to use. We have built into the CRM that comes with your leads a click to dial function. So when you're looking at the lead, all you have to do is right click on the phone number and you're able to dial it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's a built-in function within our CRM, very handy. And we try to give you the tools you need, not the ones that you got to go pay extra money for. That'll get you done with most of what you need to get done.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So my question to that is now, it's if I'm on my laptop, how is it dialing?
Again, we'll talk with you about it from support, but you have your browser. Your browser will need to be set up to do that. It's a built-in function of a web browser. A lot of people, when they embed it in the code that makes up the web page, it's embedded as a TEL phone number, and the browser recognizes it as a phone number, and it will automatically link to whatever you have set up, probably your cell phone, as part of that, and it will dial it for you right up your browser.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you so much.
We can help you do that. Call support, anything, support@alltheleads.com, and our team there can help you get that set up.
Awesome.
Okay. All right.
Thank
Well, we
you.
look forward to hearing from you next week, and you rock on, get other good things done. Guys, we've scooted through an hour here. Always goes faster than I thought it was going to be. Great call today. Appreciate it. Jimmy?
Yeah, great attendance, great participation. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. I want to particularly thank David, Winston, Lean, Bill, Melissa, David number 2, Patty and Mrs. Patty in the field there, and Steve and Julia for actively participating. And I want to challenge each of you, or she's laughing, maybe it's not Mrs., but whoever you are associated with Patty, I want to thank you. But I want to thank all of you for actively participating. I want to challenge each of you to take one idea, one thing that inspired you on this call, go out and put it into practice, and please come back next Thursday and share the results with the group. Have a great week, everybody. Take care. Same time next Thursday.